Good morning everyone, I hope we are well. In today's lesson we're going to be learning about the quadratic formula. Okay, so for us to have success today we need to be able to solve a quadratic by using the formula. So we've already looked at how to solve a quadratic by factorising, we've already looked at how to solve a quadratic by completing the square, but there's another way we can solve them and we're going to be learning about that today. Okay, so the first thing we need to understand is that any quadratic equation can be written in this form. So something x squared plus something x plus that constant at the end. So we call the coefficient of x squared a, the coefficient of x b, and that constant at the end we call c. So let's say you had the quadratic equation 2x squared plus 6x plus 4 equals 0. Can you think what would our values of a, b, and c be? Well, our value of a is 2, the value of b is 6, and the value of c is 4. So it literally just matches up, and I've just highlighted them with those colours so you can clearly see. Okay, so let's just try another one. Okay, so we've got 4x squared plus 7x plus 6 equals 0. So take 10 seconds, write down what is a, what is b, and what is c. Okay, so our values of a, our value of a is 4, value of b is 7, and the value of c is 6. Okay, let's try another one. So this one looks slightly different to the last two examples that we've done. So take a few seconds to think about this. So you can be writing this in your rough book as you go. Okay, so for this quadratic, we can see it's not quite in that form yet. So for our general form of a quadratic to work, so for this a, b, and c thing to work, I need to have my quadratic all set equal to 0. At the moment, neither side of my equation is 0, but there's a quick adjustment that I could make to make that happen. If I add 5x squared to both sides, so eliminate this negative 5x squared, my quadratic equation turns into this. So I've added 5x squared to both sides to turn it into this format that we want. We want it in the format my quadratic equal to 0. Alright, so now I'm in a good position to figure out my values of a, b, and c. The value of a is the coefficient of x squared, which is 5. The value of b, be careful, it's not 6, it's negative 6. So that negative sign that's very much attached to that coefficient of x. So b is negative 6. And then that constant at the end, that c is positive 43. Alright, so now we know how to name these values a, b, and c. I'm going to show you the quadratic formula. Right, so this is one of the most famous pieces of maths that you will see. It's a formula that we need to know off by heart, and it simply says that any equation in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So any general quadratic, it can be solved by substituting in these values into this formula. So if you're confident with how to use substitution, you will be good at the quadratic formula. Please can you get your best books out? Our title is the Quadratic Formula. So write your data title and make sure you write down everything on this screen, please. So please could your cover supervisor pause the video and give the chance time to make some notes on this. Alright, so hopefully we've made these notes in our books. We need to know this off by heart, but until you've memorized it, make sure you have this important formula in front of you for the duration of the lesson, because we're going to need it. Okay, so I'm going to show you exactly how this formula is used. So let's say in an exam they ask us to use the quadratic formula to solve x squared plus 7x plus 8 equals 0. First of all, I just need to identify my values of a, b, and c. My value of a, really this is a 1x squared, but we just don't really write the 1, do we? So it's 1x squared, so my a is 1, my b is 7, and my c is 8. Right, so I'm taking my quadratic formula, which we should now have in our best books, and then I simply need to substitute in these values. Okay, so it will look something like this. So I've got negative b, so I've got negative 7, and it's plus or minus the square root of b squared, so it's 7 squared, minus 4 lots of A times C. And my A is 1, C is 8. I'm just substituting in really. Okay, so I've made my substitution, but there's a lot of tidying up to do. So for example, I know 7 squared is 49. I can work out 4 times 1 times 8. I can work out 2 times 1. So I'm just going to do some maths here. I'm just going to tidy up and simplify as much as I can. So I've done a bit of tidying, but still, in my square root sign, I've still got root 49 minus 32. Let's work out 49 minus 32. So that gives me root 17. Also, I have a plus or minus sign here. So this represents two solutions. So I have my positive version and I have my negative version as well. So I write one version with a positive root 17 and one version with negative root 17. So I've split it up into two separate solutions. And then each of these I can type in on my calculator. So on my calculator, I'm literally going to grab it, type in negative 7 plus root 17 over root 2. And that will give me negative 1.438, and I've just rounded to something sensible, so I've gone for 3 decimal places. And then my other solution, again, I get this by simply typing it in on my calculator. So generally the quadratic formula tends to come up in a calculator paper, but if it comes up in a non-calculator paper, you can leave your solutions in surd form like this. So obviously they're not going to expect you to find these decimal values without a calculator. Right, but in a calculator exam, it will usually tell you to round to something sensible like 3 decimal places. All right. So guys, that's a complete example of the quadratic formula. Now that you have an example from me, what I'd like you to do, I want you to ask your cover supervisor to pause the video at this point, please. And now you have 2 questions at the bottom of your screen to try. So I want you to solve both of these equations by using the quadratic formula. This should take around 5 minutes, but if you finish early, please encourage your teacher to unpause the video and show you the solutions. Right, so let's pause the video and let's try questions A and B in our best books, please. Okay, so let me give you your solutions for A and B then. Okay, so my first one, so I'm just figuring out my values of A, B and C to start off with. So you should have had A is 1, B is 5 and C is 3. Taken your quadratic formula and made a substitution like so. It's important that you remember it's negative B, so I've got negative 5. Okay, so just working it through and tidying up, these are my complete solutions to 3 decimal places. So pause the video if you need this on your screen for a bit, but if you're happy with that, I'm going to continue. Okay, and that part B, so your second example, you've got 3x squared, negative 8x, negative 7. So these are our values of A, B and C. Okay, and I'm just taking my formula and I'm making that substitution and tidying up. So here's your complete solution. So hopefully this helps. And again, just pause the video if you just needed a bit more time to check this. Alright guys, so for your main classwork today, you can do this in your rough books please. This task should take you about 20 minutes. It's quite self-explanatory. For each question I want you to solve it by using the quadratic formula, and I will be giving you your solutions to 2 decimal places, so you should probably do the same. If you manage to whiz through this and do it quickly, you've got an extension task that you might find quite fun. I want you to try and derive the quadratic formula. So that means, let's say you've got a quadratic ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. How did mathematicians discover that this formula works? I'm going to give you a clue. You can take this general form of the quadratic equation and you can get to the quadratic formula by completing the square. So you can make x the subject by completing the square. Right, so I'm not going to give you any more clues for the extension. I'm going to leave that one up to you. And I'd be really interested to hear how you got on once I'm back at school. But yeah, so please pause the video now. Like I said, this should take you about 20 minutes. All right. All right, so here are your solutions for this task. Alright guys, so what I want you to do next, I want you to solve these three quadratic equations by using the formula. Okay, so the first one should be very similar to what you've just done, but the second one and the third one, you should notice something quite interesting about these two equations. All right, so I want you to pause the video. Should take you around 3 to 5 minutes, I'd say. And as soon as you're ready, please let your cover supervisor that you would like the solutions, and we'll talk about what's interesting about these. Okay, so for the first equation, very similar to what we just done. It's just a quadratic equation with two solutions. So you should have got around negative 4.4 and 0.4. Okay, nothing too interesting about that one. But what about this one? When I substitute into the formula, I notice that this square root part is just 0. So actually, both of my solutions are identical. I get x is negative 4 over 2, i.e. x is negative 2. So actually, because when I split this formula into 2, x is just negative 2. There is only one solution to this quadratic. And then for my last equation, when I substitute into the quadratic formula, did anyone else spot this? Did you end up getting to a point where there's a negative root? Okay, we know that we can't square root a negative number because something times something can't equal negative 39. That doesn't physically make sense in maths. That means that this equation is just invalid. We can't solve this. Because we can't find the square roots of a negative, there is no solution to this equation. Right? So physically on a graph, this looks like this. If there are two solutions, we would have two roots, and there will be 2 points where the graph intersects the x-axis. When there was one solution, so in our second example there, it means my quadratic, it intersects the axes exactly once. And then when there are no solutions, that doesn't mean that your equation is wrong or anything. It simply means that your quadratic does not intersect the x-axis. So it kind of just hovers above and it never crosses that line. Right? And the reason we can quickly spot how many solutions there are to a quadratic is called the discriminant. So you know when we've got the quadratic formula, the discriminant is the part inside our square root. So the discriminant is this part b squared minus 4ac. So when that discriminant is greater than 0, so just like what we've seen for most of the lesson, when this part is greater than 0, so the discriminant is greater than 0, we have two solutions, and that means there'll be two roots when you sketch your quadratic. Just like in the second question that we just saw before, if that discriminant is equal to 0, so if what's inside my square root is 0, there will be exactly one solution, and my quadratic will intersect the x-axis once. And if my discriminant is less than 0, we can't square root a negative. That means there are just no solutions. Alright, so please can you pause the video and make some notes on this in your best books. So everything you see on this screen, that should be written down in your best books, please. So unpause the video when you're ready. Alright then, so taking what we've just talked about the discriminant, I want you to try the following questions. So first of all, I want you to show that there are no solutions to this quadratic equation. So you don't need to use the quadratic formula to solve. How can you just use this discriminant, so this b squared minus 4ac part? Right, and once you've done that, I want to know how many solutions are there to these two equations in the bottom left of our screen. Okay, so pause the video and then unpause when you're ready for the solutions. Okay, so for this first one, if I use the discriminant, so if I use b squared, so 2 squared minus 4ac, so minus 4 lots of 1 times by 2, that will give us negative 4. So because I have a negative discriminant, that means that there are no solutions to this quadratic. And similarly, using the discriminant, I could say that this first equation has one solution and the second equation has exactly two solutions. Alright, if there's anything that you found tricky today, please don't hesitate to send me a message on Google Classroom. I'm not ill, I'm just isolating, so I'm available to help you. If you finish the lesson early in class, you're more than welcome to grab a blue GCSE textbook and turn to page 402 for the rest of the lesson. Alright, so just let me know if you need any help, and I hope you're all well. Thank you very much, guys.